Today on TFLRide, we have episode 4 of our new podcast, and we have a couple important things to talk about here, starting off with some Honda news, because there's a few things going on with Honda motorcycles that have us pretty excited. One in particular that's going to give Yamaha a run for its money, and we also have a lot going on around the office that we'll talk about later, but first we have to start out with this Honda news.
Yeah, so this image, if you're watching the podcast, you see right behind us is a concept image that's basically a sketch at this point, but it's an image that's been floating around the internet for months now, and it's a bike that a lot of people have been just getting crazy excited about. And one of the big reasons for that is because it's going to use an all-new engine. It's not all that often that you see a brand new motorcycle launched with an all-new engine, new nameplate that they're bringing back from back in the day. But a lot of times we just see a new motor being kind of morphed into a new model. So this isn't that. This is an all-new bike with an all-new engine. And there's a lot to get excited about, both with the bike itself, but also just now that we know some more specs about the engine, there's a lot here we can get excited about.
Yeah, so if you don't know, this is the Honda Hornet, and that's a name that's been around for a long time. Honda produced a model called the Hornet from 1998 to 2013, and that was powered by a 599cc inline four-cylinder engine, but that name never made it stateside, partly because the trademark for the name Hornet belonged to AMC and Chrysler.
Yeah, so this is the old Hornet. This one we're looking at is a 2011. So in other places in the world, it was called the Hornet, but we did get the same bike here in the States, and it was the CB600F.
Yeah, and back in EICMA of 2021, so back in November of 2021, Honda announced that this Hornet nameplate was coming back, and we got these sketches like the one that you saw a moment ago. So not really a lot of information to go off of, but now there's been a big development in the Honda Hornet, being that we actually have specs for the engine. So a few basic specs to get into it. The motor is going to be an all-new 755cc parallel twin unicam engine, which is a big deal because it's not all that often that we get brand new engines in the motorcycle world. I mean, a lot of engines go through a number of stages of development and refinement before you ever usually get anything brand new. So, brand new motorcycle engine from Honda, that's already exciting. Supposedly 90 horsepower at 9,500 RPM, so pretty high RPM, and 55 pound-feet of torque at 7,250. So definitely an engine that likes to rev out. But there's something in particular about this parallel twin that has us really excited.
Yeah, it's a 270-degree crank, which is something that up until now, at least out of the major four manufacturers, you could really only get in this size bike in a Yamaha with their CP2.
Yeah, there's some British manufacturers that make parallel twins that are 270 degree, which is why a lot of the British twins make a really good noise.
Yeah. So unique firing order, you're going to get a really distinct sound out of that.
It's uneven, the firing order.
And also just a really good, I like the feel of these bikes, or I shouldn't say these bikes, I haven't ridden one of these, but every bike I've ridden with a cross-plane crank in the past has just been super responsive, gobs of power, and looking at the specs for this, I expect it to be no different. 90 horsepower at 9,500 RPM, 90 horse out of a 755, a middleweight parallel twin, a middleweight sport bike engine. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's pretty good, and we love the CP2. I mean, every bike that runs a CP2 from Yamaha, we're huge fans of. XSR 700, R7, even though as controversial as it is, and the name is, and the lack of an R6 is, still a great bike. MT-07, even back in the day, the FZ-07, same thing.
Tenere 700.
Yeah, T7.
Yeah, every bike that motor goes into is just phenomenal.
And they sound fantastic.
And they sound amazing. And so what we know so far, or I guess what we can assume so far, looking at some of the designs, I can't talk. Some of the design sketches of the Hornet is this looks like an FZ-07 competitor.
Yeah, it does.
Right? It's going to be a naked sport bike. It's in that middleweight category, and I think that's smart. I think for a while Yamaha was kind of dominating that market. If we go over to the Honda motorcycle website real quick and take a look at what they offer, they've got bikes in this class. They just have never really exploded. Like they have a CB650R, they have bikes in this class, and I just never see them on the road. For every one CB650R I see on the road, I probably see 30 FZ or MT-07s. So it's cool that Honda's kind of revamping this and making just this ultra explosive and popular category of bikes, and they're taking it to the strong arm, basically. The manufacturer that has been killing it. So.
And it seems really like Honda has, just from our perspective, aimed their sights at the MT-07 and tried to make a bike that's absolutely going to blow it out of the water, because we're looking at, with the MT-07, 689 cc, 75 horsepower, 4 valves per cylinder, versus 755 cc, 90 horsepower, 8 valves per cylinder. So we're looking at a bike that's probably going to be more expensive than the MT-07, you would assume, but it's going to be notably more powerful. It's gonna have a good bit more motor in it.
Yeah, that's interesting. You mentioned the price. I want to look at the MT-07 on Yamaha's website real quick and just take a look at the price. So $78.99 for an MT-07.
Yeah,
and the closest competitor to that in a Honda is the CB650R, which is $92.99. So. Yeah, quite a bit of a price jump, and I don't think Honda's going to come in and undercut Yamaha at all with the price.
No.
Wouldn't expect that at all.
No, I think this is going to be a bigger, badder alternative to the MT-07. There's still obviously going to be a place for the MT-07, but this bike coming in, I think, is just going to take that same kind of attitude, that same kind of powertrain, and just slam the scene by making it bigger and badder.
And I hope they do.
And I'm also excited. We're both excited because this engine is almost certainly going to make it into plenty of other bikes.
Yeah, like let's face it, it's really expensive for a motorcycle manufacturer to develop an all-new engine. And that's why across all the manufacturers, like we just did this video where we went through every single motorcycle in the Kawasaki lineup. And the amount of engine sharing that happens in that lineup is... it's not mind-blowing. I mean, it's predictable. It makes a lot of sense, and that's exactly what you're going to see here. There's no way Honda's developing an all-new engine just for one motorcycle when they have all these other options to choose from, and they could have put something else in it. So I think it's pretty safe to say we're going to see this naked sport bike MT-07 competitor. I also think it's pretty safe to say we're going to see it come into some sort of smaller adventure bike to compete with the TFLRide, the KTM, the 390, and is it a 690 or a 790 adventure that they do now?
Yeah, I think they're going to try and put this motor in as many bikes as they can, and some of them are almost certainly going to make it stateside. So this is an engine that we really are looking forward to, and we're just happy that Honda is getting with the program of a 270-degree parallel twin, because those are the parallel twins that are fun to have. I mean, things like a CB500 or CBR 500. That's
Ignore that band. That's from a different podcast.
Things that bikes that have a 180-degree parallel twin, they work fine. It just doesn't give you that same satisfaction because you don't have the sound. Yeah. So Honda getting on board with a 270-degree twin is reason to be excited. This is some of the biggest news, the most exciting news that we've rolled across in a while. Yeah, we're happy for it.
What excites me is that 90 horsepower. Would you say the MT-07 is? It's
75.
75, so 15 extra horse.
That's a lot.
Yeah, that's a good amount. Yeah, I'm really hoping we can get some seat time on this when it finally does roll around.
And for a middleweight bike, 90 horsepower is a really nice number.
That's a perfect number. It's great.
A great number.
Yeah, so there's your Honda Hornet news. We have no further information on when this bike is going to make a full reveal.
No.
So we have this is an official image from Honda of the engine. So Honda has come out, they've put out the specs. These aren't speculations. This is what the motor is going to look like. These are the numbers. But the bike right now, the Hornet itself, is still just a sketch. So
But we're more excited about the engine than the bike itself anyway, because the engine, like we said, just has a lot more ability to do more things than it doesn't in just one motorcycle.
Yeah, exactly. So as we find out more about this, we'll be sure to keep you kind of in the loop and hopefully, get up close and personal with it. But I really, really am looking forward to this because I'm hoping, and I do think that Honda is going to have a winner with this right here. And it'll be interesting to see just how the public reacts to it too, and if a lot of people are going to start trading in bikes and checking this out. So
now, the other bit of news that's come from Honda in this same time period is something that we'll go through pretty quick. It's related to development, especially when it comes to electrification. So this also pertains to, obviously, the future of gas-powered Honda bikes, and there are some relieving things that they've said in this announcement related to electrification. So their goal is to reach carbon neutrality for all motorcycles during the 2040s. So they say that they're accelerating electrification, but they're also still advancing their internal combustion engine. So they haven't given up on combustion. They want to advance internal combustion, reduce CO2 emissions, and develop models that use more carbon neutral fuels like gasoline ethanol blends. So they want to launch a lot of flex fuel models in India running on E20 starting in 2023, E100 in 2025.
Brazil I think they're already selling bikes in Brazil on E100.
Yeah, and obviously these are huge, huge markets for two-wheeled vehicles.
Yeah, I mean, we tend to get stuck in this little box of thinking about our market here, which for us, motorcycles are pleasure vehicles for the most part. You know, toys for the weekend or commuters when the weather's nice. But in India and China, those are, a lot of other markets
they're
too.
Delivery vans, they're people carriers, they're everything.
They're people's main vehicles for transportation.
So obviously hugely important markets for the manufacturers.
Yeah, and Honda is already starting to work. It's funny you said like delivery vehicles, because in Japan, Thailand, and Vietnam, they're already starting to work with the local postal companies, postal services, on what they're calling the Honda e-business bikes, basically little scooters to use for mail carriers and, getting small packages around those small cities. So, or not small cities, huge cities, but on small roads that are just totally overcrowded. It is, like you said, refreshing to see them talk about how they're not only going to push the electrification of things, but also how they're going to improve their ICE-powered vehicles. And it's also refreshing to see in a time when 1.5 million manufacturers are talking about electrification, we see an all-new gas engine with 90 horsepower coming from Honda. So
they haven't given up.
There's good and, there's good
vehicles,
and great news there, good and bad news, depending on how you look at it. This image I have on the screen I wanted to talk about real quick because this is kind of their global motorcycle lineup for the next 3 or so years. These are silhouettes of all the models they plan to announce by 2025 or plan to launch by 2025. And I don't think most of them are going to come here to the States, only because there's so many scooters there, and we're just not a scooter market. Like, they
not
sell
as much
here
as abroad.
But they're not as crazy popular as they are overseas.
Yeah, so they're going to have 10 new models that are going to be electric by 2025, 7 scooters, 1 big scooter, which is kind of a popular segment abroad, 2 motorcycles, and a smaller dirt bike. And their goal is to sell 1 million electric models in the next 5 years, 3.5 million EVs, so 15% of their total sales by 2030. And their goal is to reach carbon neutrality for all of their products and corporate activities by 2050. So a lot of big goals that they have going forward, but Honda is a big company that's got the power to make that kind of thing happen.
Yeah, so there's a little graph if you're watching this. You can just kind of see the different years and how sort of the projection they have of ICE versus electric sales in terms of their motorcycles. Going back to this for just 1 second, I do want to focus on this bottom row of 4 vehicles because those are the 4 that I think will make it here to the US, or at least have the best chance. So starting over on the left-hand side, this is a trend that's been really popular, and Honda, I think, already is selling one of these here. But basically a Strider taken to the next level. So almost like an electric balance bike for kids, but just an easy way to start a kid off on a dirt bike before actually getting them on something with real suspension and something that's going to cost a lot of money too. So, if you're a parent and you're not sure if your kid is even going to be into the whole thing, you can get into one of these electric bikes a little more affordably, less maintenance, and it's just easier to get your kid out on the trail. So that's what I think that first model is going to be. Then we have 2 street bikes, it looks like. The first one, probably some sort of naked. So think of the Hornet we just talked about, but in an electric form. I think that's probably the best bet for that bike. And then that third bike looks to be some sort of cruiser or like a Rebel, something like that. And then that looks like an X-ADV that we reviewed over on the right-hand side. Remember that like Africa Twin like scooter that we had?
Yeah, that seems to be the big scooter that they were talking about.
Yeah, so there's your 4 models that I think in the next couple of years at least will probably make it here to the U.S. Some sort of naked, some sort of cruiser, some sort of smaller youth dirt bike, and then a commuter scooter.
The omission that I see there that is a very popular type of bike, well, just in general, would be a full fairing bike.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, you being more of the sport bike guy, and especially as powerful as electric vehicles are, do you see a lot of potential for electric full fairing bikes as track bikes, that kind of thing?
I think someone's going to make one because, and people already are, like Energica's making a fully faired bike. But I sort of think if I were running Honda, it'd be the last thing I would get to.
Right.
It seems like sport bikes are past their heyday. Like they were really popular in the late 90s, early 2000s. Everyone needed a crotch rocket. And now that's just not the case. There's like this Hornet. There's all kinds of crazy powerful motorcycles that are a hell of a lot more comfortable to ride for any extended period of time.
Because I can see it for more my style of bike, like a cruiser.
Yeah, it makes sense.
That's a comfortable style of bike that somebody might get into maybe as their first motorcycle. It being electric would make it easier, at least in some ways, to operate because you don't have a clutch and a transmission to contend with. I can also see it for dirt bikes because it's been proven that electric dirt bikes can be unbelievably functional. Actually, Fortnite did a video on that. Really great video.
I'll have to go watch that.
It's a really good video they did about Alta. So a lot of potential for electric dirt bikes, but for sport bikes, full fairing, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, I just think we're past like the days of people wanting fully faired sport bikes for the street. It's becoming less and less popular. And sure, people still do it. The R7 that Yamaha came out with is starting to make it a little more popular again. But for me, I don't want a fully faired sport bike on the street. They suck. Like they're really uncomfortable. They're really fun on the track, and I think
doesn't it make you look cool though?
I mean, you can look cool on any bike. And for anyone that's going to the track and wants a fully faired bike for the track, they're the last group of people that's going to want an electric motorcycle.
I can see that.
So, I think you're right. I think cruisers and entry-level bikes and mini motos, I think that's what the manufacturers need to be focusing on right now. And less of the electric stuff. It's also, I mean, as a track bike, like imagine wadding up a giant battery pack and like electric motor. How are you ever going to find a replacement for that at a reasonable cost? So
and also electric motorcycles are heavy, which is always a factor on any race vehicle. I would imagine, especially with a track bike, if you want to have corner speed, a heavier bike is probably just going to be more of a handful.
Yeah, and any electric, like I just was 2 days ago on Saturday, today's Monday, I was at Pueblo Motorsports Park down in Pueblo, Colorado. They don't have any power there. It's all gas generators. Like the High Plains, you can rent a paddock or, there's PPIR, you can rent a garage with power outlets to get your tire warmers going. Pueblo, you don't have that. So if you have an electric, fully faired race bike down in Pueblo, how are you recharging that in between sessions? Gas generator. So even that right now, if they were available, they're still going to be gas powered.
I think the potential for putting down power and acceleration, I can see that potential there. But it might take a while before the technology has gotten to a point where it's practical.
The dirt bike thing I can really get on board with, though, because especially, you know, out here in Colorado, getting on any kind of trail, hearing the birds chirping around you, not scared. Like if there's a moose in the middle of the trail and you're rolling up on a CRF 450, that moose is going to
we've already
get
spent
the hell out of there.
A bit of time on electric trail bikes, and it is a pretty cool experience, honestly. 'Cause you do feel like you get to interact maybe a little bit more with your surroundings just because there's that one extra sensory component that's left open to interact with more than just the bike.
And the commuting thing is interesting too, like the sound part of it on something like a scooter that you're riding around in Boulder. The Boulder drivers here are just the worst. Like this is one of the most frustrating places to drive and ride. And the sound scares me a little bit sometimes. Like, let me know what you think down in the comments below. But one of the things I love the most about my MT-09 and my Monkey is that they're both really loud. And I know it pisses off my neighbors, and I feel really bad every time I start them up. But I do like that if I'm passing someone on the left-hand side, they can hear me coming. And that's another warning that there's a motorcycle. On an electric bike...
Yeah. I know the loud pipe save live thing is obviously very controversial.
It's very controversial.
And it's not a reason to have a loud bike necessarily. But yeah, I mean, I don't know.
But there's a difference between, like, even a stock motorcycle with stock pipes. You're going to hear that coming down the road on most motorcycles. Maybe not really small displacement.
Yeah, or if they're hanging out there, you know, if a motorcycle is hanging out in a car's blind spot, you'll probably hear some amount of buzzing if you're paying attention.
Exactly.
You don't have your music too loud.
If there's no sound on all motorcycles, and I know these bikes are rolling around already, but as they start to become more and more popular, I'll be really curious to see how much more defensive you have to be riding a motorcycle around, just knowing that the person in the Tesla in front of you has autopilot on and is eating their lunch as you're trying to pass them, but also that, you know, they don't have a clue you're coming because there's no sound. So
So who knows?
Yeah.
And then we can also talk about what's been going on here at the office. You have a section in the notes.
One more thing. Standardization of batteries.
Yeah, so you have a section in the notes labeled standardization of batteries, which I feel like nobody is interested in.
Oh, I'm super interested in this. This is super cool.
Alex loves tech.
This is the most exciting part of this whole electric bike thing. So, yeah, look all disappointed. That's okay. So what's really cool is the 4 major brands came together to standardize the batteries. This is only happening in Japan right now, but Suzuki, Honda, Yamaha, and Kawasaki all came together to form Eneos Holdings Incorporated. And what they created was the JASO or JASO, I could be getting that wrong, TP31003 guideline.
Which is super interesting.
That's a great name for a guideline. But basically, it's common specifications for a battery. So the idea is you're going to be able to go to a battery charging station and swap batteries out, or go to any dealership and get a different battery. So you're not stuck with going to like a Honda charger or a Yamaha charger. Any electric motorcycle, at least from these 4 brands, and hopefully more in the future, you'll be able to go to any charging station or put any battery in it, and they'll all work together. And Honda is also working on some sort of battery system like this, trying to get the other brands on board in India and Europe. And my hope is that if it takes off in Japan, India, and Europe, it'll take off in China, and then it'll take off here because it costs money to develop new technologies. And if it's already working all over the world, hopefully it works here too. I think that's really cool. You don't seem that impressed by it.
Yeah,
but
you call my cruisers boring. I bet Andy is even tuned out at this point.
Oh man, Andy's loving this right now.
Let us know in the comments below
Andy's
if you followed all of
loving
that
this
and found it
I just think
interesting,
it's really cool. Anytime I tell someone who's like into electric cars or something that this might be a possibility in motorcycles, they're like, "Oh, that's the coolest thing in the world." And it's cool.
It would be nice for at least the Japanese bikes to all have the same kinds of chargers.
Yeah, just the fact that they're their biggest competitors and they're working together to make it easier for us to get around on an electric bike. That's cool. You gotta admit, that's cool.
For the future.
Case loves it. So does Andy.
All right, should we tell people what's been going on around the office?
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Honestly, a lot. We've been traveling a ton, which is part of the reason that we didn't have a podcast last week, because both Alex and I were out of town. We managed to squeeze out just a couple hours today to take the TW200 up to a local trail. not a very difficult trail, Switzerland Trail, but we at least got to take the T-Dub up into the mountains, spend a little time rolling over some rocks.
It was great.
Yeah, I did roll down one rock that was a little bit bigger of a drop than I was expecting. Didn't put the bike down. It went all right, but that video will be coming soon.
Yeah. I went last week when, we couldn't do a podcast because I was out of town. I went to Lincoln, Nebraska to the Kawasaki manufacturing facility, Kawasaki Motors Manufacturing, KMM is now what it's called. And if you want to see that video, it should be up already on TFL Off-Road. And there's no motorcycle manufacturing in that video, but I wanted to touch on it real quick because that was, I think, the first international company to manufacture vehicles and open up a plant here in the US. They beat everyone else here. So it's been around a really long time, since the 70s. And some of the earliest motorcycles that Kawasaki made here in the US were made right there in that factory. So in that video, there's one portion when I go up into this room they had upstairs above the factory. And it was the first VIN room is what I call it, because it was basically the first vehicle from every production line to roll off. They put up with VIN number 1 up in that room. So there's just a whole wall of old Ninjas and police bikes and all these old cool pieces of history. And they're literally, every single one of them is the first one to
VIN
roll off.
one,
VIN number 1 or within 2 or 3. Some of them are 2 or 3. But all that footage is in that video. So while it's not a motorcycle related video, it's more about the mule and the side-by-sides. If you want to see some of the first Kawasaki bikes to roll off the production line in the US, go check that video out. Really cool.
Yeah, and it's also just really impressive how many things Kawasaki manufactures. An unbelievable amount of stuff that you would not at all expect are manufactured by Kawasaki, but like subway, train cars.
Yeah, airplane doors.
Even
like the robotic, the robots that move around welding things together. They make their own
like
robots
the actual
and stuff.
factory robots.
Yeah, the factory, they make their own robots. And wheels too, like the steel wheels that go on ATVs and side-by-sides. Kawasaki makes those for Polaris and Yamaha and Honda and all the different brands.
Yeah, so you would never expect that your Honda or your Polaris side-by-side is rolling on Kawasaki wheels.
Yeah,
but
if you have a base model like Honda side-by-side from a few years ago, or one of the base models with steel wheels, look on the inside of it. It'll say Kawasaki stamped onto the inside of the wheel.
Yeah, so they manufacture an
it'll say
impressive amount of
KMM,
stuff.
not Kawasaki.
See, that factory tour video that's going up on TFL Off-Road, that's one of those videos that one of us will film thinking, this is going to be a boring video.
Yeah.
And then it actually ends up being pretty cool.
It's cool. So even if, you're not into side-by-sides, you're a gearhead because you're watching this video. Go watch that because you'll see some cool bikes in there. And the same production lines where the mule's rolling down right now is once back in the day exactly where the Ninjas were rolling down. So it's just cool to see. What else has been going on?
Well, you rode that Buell Blast.
I rode the Buell Blast. That was a weird bike.
Yeah, especially the handling on it is pretty interesting because that's the big difference between it and obviously any Harley Davidson.
Yeah, it wanted to stand itself up. Like it liked to corner once you got it in there and really leaned it. But if you just kind of gave it a little press of the handlebar and then rolled on throttle, it would stand itself right back up. Really sporty suspension though. Like really stiff. You could feel every little bump in the road, which is how I like to ride. It didn't feel like a worn out Harley Davidson. So
yeah,
I thought it was cool. My favorite part of that bike is the exhaust, the belly pan look on it.
I'm glad you like it. I'm glad somebody does.
It's cool.
It's not my style.
It's not a great style, but it's funky and
it's weird.
It's weird, which is why I like it.
Weird.
I like weird things. So yeah, rode that.
You also got your R6 track bike back together.
Got my R6 back together. I took it for a test ride around my neighborhood and the exhaust started to come off. So I had to safety wire an exhaust hanger back together.
Which looked hilarious.
It looked great. The tech guys at the track loved it. But I passed tech and yeah, that was good. Uneventful day back on the bike. And
yeah, other than everyone around you crashing.
Yeah, there were a decent number of crashes. My buddy Sam took a little corner 7, if you know that track. Tight left-hand hairpin. Just slid out a little bit. He was fine. Bike was fine. Said
goodbye to his bike.
Said goodbye to his bike, and then just was sitting in the middle of the track. Just sitting duck. It was funny. But yeah, that's been going on.
There haven't been that many motorcycle events going on. It's just been a lot of events for really everything else. I was on an overlanding trip last week with the folks over at Firestone Tires. You were at Kawasaki. Some of our other team was at the Detroit Auto Show.
Yep.
Yeah, there's been a lot going on, so haven't had as much time to actually get on the road and ride as we would like. But I'm hoping that we're going to have some more time coming up here to spend some time in the saddle.
Yeah, we're getting to that time of year. That's really my favorite time of year to ride because it's that time where you have to sneak in every bit of riding you can because soon we're going to be snowed in and not be able to do it. So you really just try and get the bike out as much as possible. As much as possible. I can't talk today. But it's also just beautiful around here. I was shooting some of the leaves on that TW video, and they're just starting to turn yellow up in the mountains, real high up. So real soon we should have, I'm hoping we can get the drone out and, get some scenic rides with the fall colors. And
yeah, it would be great to just do some adventure videos. I mean, we're not by any stretch of the imagination phenomenal off-road riders, so it would be fun to just hit some Colorado trails.
Yeah, we want to advertise how awesome it is in Colorado.
Yeah. For people who want to come visit or even just tune in to see what it's like out here because it is a really unique landscape. So yeah, we just want to do some videos where we go on an adventure up in the mountains, hit some trails, see the sights, and ride some fun motorcycles. So we'll have that coming up, especially when the leaves change, because that's going to be the perfect time for filming it. You've got your track bike back together. You're always working on a bunch of stuff with that. I have really nothing interesting going on when it comes to two wheels and my garage. The engine in my CB750 is still just a paperweight on Andy's workbench.
You've been riding the Harley a lot, though. It's good to see.
I do ride the Sportster a good bit. But yeah, I don't really have much going on. Still got my little Honda Monkey, which at some point, and we might even do this week, we did a little video where we compared Alex's Honda Monkey, which is the new Monkey 125, to my classic Z50, 1971. And it's just cool to see. I mean, those two bikes are exactly 50 years apart. And they're the same color, same paint scheme and everything. So kind of cool to see them side by side. But in the last video, we didn't have a chance to actually ride them. So I'd love to do a follow-up video, and again, maybe this week, where we take both bikes up to the ranch and do some riding on them.
I'm down. Let's do it.
Yeah. See which one wheelies better.
Oh, I can answer that question.
My bike is a hardtail. It's a wheelie monster.
It's all about the rider.
Well, yeah. True. But if you were on my Z50...
I don't want to drop your bike. I'm probably not going to want to wheel it.
I've dropped my bike.
Yeah, I don't like dropping other people's bikes.
Flash flare.
Every time.
So, yeah, that's pretty much everything that we've got going on here. A little bit of Honda news. And, yeah, hopefully we'll be riding on some trails soon.
Yeah, stay tuned. It's, like I said, it's that time of year when riding's getting really good, but it's also that time of year when all the new bikes are starting to be announced. And
yeah, news is going to be coming.
Yeah, news is coming. Ducati does their thing where, every week they announce something new, and EICMA's coming up. So, plenty to look forward to. Stay tuned. Do you have anything else?
No.
Are we all good?
That's all.
Head on over to alltfl.com so you don't miss anything there. TFLbids.com. We've got some vehicles up for auction there. Check that out, and we'll catch you in the next video.